in simple Bengali language, Narottam Das's songs give Shastra conclusions and devotional inspiration. Srila Prabhupada often sang these bhajans, considering them non-different from Vedic Shastra. He quoted them. In his Bhagavatam lectures, Pratana and Prema Bhakti Chandrika are Narottam's most famous works. Narottam Das serves Srimati Radhika as Chamaka Manjari. His samadhi is in the Radha Gokunalanda temple's courtyard. Srila Narottam Das Thakur ki Haribo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this looks like a big one. Maybe I can just run through it. It's, are we on text 33? Okay, so text 33. I'll just run through the Sanskrit and then we can do the word for word together. Om Namaste Stu Bhagavan Narayana Vasudeva Di Purusha Maha. Do you know this one? Purusha Mahan Bhava Parama Mangala Parama Kalyana Parama Karunika Kevala Jagad Adhara Lokaya Nata Saveshvara Lakshmi Nata Paramahansa Parivrajaka Paraman Natma Yoga Samadhina Paribhavita Parushputa Paramahamsha Dhamma Negatita Tama Kapata Dvari Chite Pavitra Atmaloke Swayam Upalabda Nija Sukhanubhavo Bhavam. So I'll just go through the word for word. O Lord, Namaha, respectful obeisances, Te, unto you, Astu, let there be, Bhagavan, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, the resort of all living entities, Narayan, Vasudeva, Lord Vasudeva, Shri Krishna, Adi Purusha, the original person, Mahapurusha, the most exalted personality, Maha Anubhava, the supremely opulent, Paramamangala, the most auspicious, Paramakalyana, the supreme benediction, Paramakarunika, the supremely merciful, Kevala, changeless, Jagat Adara, the support of the cosmic manifestation, Loka Ekanata, the only proprietor of all the planetary systems, Sava Ishvara, the supreme controller, Lakshmi Nata, the husband of the goddess of fortune, Paramahansa Parivarjakachai, the husband of the goddess of fortune. Oh, sorry. By the topmost sannyasis wandering all over the world. Paramena, by supreme. Atma Yoga Samadhina, absorption in Bhakti Yoga. Paribhaviti, fully purified. Parisfuta, and fully manifested. Paramahamsha Dhamena, by executing the transcendental process of devotional service. Udgatita, pushed open. Tamaha, of illusory existence. Kapata, in which the door. Dhare, existing as the entrance. Chitte, in the mind. Apavrite, without contamination. Atmaloke, in the spiritual world. Swayam, personally. Upalabdha, experiencing. Nija, personal. Sukha anubhava, perception of happiness. Bhavan, your lordship. Translation: O Supreme Personality of Godhead, O Narayan, O Vasudeva, original person, O most exalted person, supreme experience, welfare personified, O supreme benediction, supremely merciful and changeless, O support of the cosmic manifestation, sole proprietor of all planetary systems, master of everything and husband of the goddess of fortune, your lordship is realized by the topmost sannyasis who wander about the world to preach Krishna consciousness, fully absorbed in samadhi through bhakti yoga. Because their minds are concentrated upon you, they can receive the conception of your personality in their fully purified hearts. When the darkness in their hearts is completely eradicated and you are revealed to them, the transcendental bliss they enjoy is the transcendental form of your lordship. No one but such persons can realize you. Therefore, we simply offer you our respectful obeisances. Okay, so that's the same theme as the last prayer, isn't it? Responsively, please. O Supreme Personality of Godhead. O Narayan. O Vasudeva. Original person. O most exalted person. Supreme experience. Welfare personified. O Supreme Benediction. Supremely merciful and changeless. O support of the cosmic manifestation. Sole proprietor of all planetary systems. Master of everything and husband of the goddess of fortune. Your lordship is realized by the topmost sannyasis who wander about the world to preach Krishna consciousness, fully absorbed in samadhi through bhakti yoga. Because their minds are concentrated upon you, they can receive the conception of your personality in their fully purified hearts. When the darkness in their hearts is completely eradicated and you are revealed to them, the transcendental bliss they enjoy is the transcendental form of your lordship. No one but such persons can realize you. Therefore, we simply offer you our respectful obeisances. Heard by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has numerous transcendental names pertaining to different grades of revelation, to various grades of devotees and transcendentalists. When he is realized in his impersonal form, he is called the Supreme Brahman. When realized as the Paramatma, he is called Antayami. And when he expands himself in different forms from material creation, he is called Sharadakashaya Vishnu, Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, and Karanadakashaya Vishnu. When he is realized as Vasudeva, Sankasham, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, the Chaturvyuha, who are beyond the three forms of Vishnu, he is the Vaikuntha Narayan. Above realization of Narayan is realization of Baladev, and above that is realization of Krishna. All these realizations are possible when one engages fully in devotional service. The covered core of one's heart is then completely open to receiving an understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his various forms. Could you just pass us my bag, my Shastra bag? Sorry. Gandak is going to get it. Thank you. Thank you very much. I just read this morning in CC. Srila Prabhupada's talking about, thank you, different stages of realization. And it's interesting. kind of reflects the same principle, but it goes a little bit more than, because there it stops with Krishna. You go through various grades. There's Brahman, then there's Paramatma, then there's Bhagavan, and then through Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, and then above that is the Chatuvyuha, and then above that is Vishnu in Vaikuntha, and then above that is Baladev, and then above that is Krishna. So different grades. And this is in the Adi Leela. Something interesting I read this morning. This is explaining the glories of the Panchatattva, actually, when this point comes up. So he says, he's quoting, this is interesting as well, because it's the song from Narottam Das Thakur. Does anyone know the song? Go Ranga Balite Hove Pulakashari. So when will there be eruptions on my body as soon as I chant the name of Lord Chaitanya? And when will there be incessant torrents of tears as soon as I chant the holy names Hare Krishna? Don't know if anyone's at that stage just yet. When will Lord Nityananda be merciful toward me and free me from all desires for material enjoyment? When will my mind be completely freed from all contamination of desires for material pleasure? Only at that time will it be possible for me to understand Vrindavan. Only if I become attached to the instructions given by the 6 Goswamis, headed by Rupa Goswami and Raghunath Das, will it be possible for me to understand the conjugal love of Radha and Krishna. So then Prabhupada explains, by attachment to devotional service of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one immediately comes to the ecstatic position. When he develops his love for Nityananda Prabhu, he is freed from all attachment to the material world, and at that time he becomes eligible to understand the Lord's pastimes in Vrindavan. In that condition, when one develops his love for the 6 Goswamis, he can understand the conjugal love between Radha and Krishna. These are the different stages of a pure devotee's promotion to conjugal love in the service of Radha and Krishna in an intimate relationship with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that's interesting, isn't it? Going through the different levels. Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda will remove the material desires. Then we enter in Vrindavan, and then we take shelter of the Goswamis, and then we can enter into the conjugal. So Srila Prabhupada's making the same point here that devotional service is progressive, and we go through stages. And like he was saying yesterday, Chaitanya Das, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is talking about, first of all, people, they appreciate God out of fear, and then they're grateful, then respect, then eventually out of love. So there's different. So generally we can't circumvent the intermediary stages we go through. I was wondering if that relates to the 4 people that take shelter of Krishna, the 4 pious people, the distressed. And because Sri Ramaj makes a point in Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani that the majority of people that take to devotional service are in distress, but Krishna then says that those who approach him in knowledge are most dear to him. So he's kind of indirectly saying, okay, so it's nice you've come, you're in distress, but you need to now come to the stage of knowledge to become dear to me. If you just stay at being distressed, then like you were saying, after the distress wears off, after the fear of inconvenience and suffering wears off, then you think, okay, where was I again? That's right, I'm going to enjoy the material world. And you go back and then you get distressed and then you come back again. If you don't go past that stage, then you just go back to the same activities. So when something is progressive, and it is called the Hare Krishna movement, it means we have to be moving toward Krishna. So it's not so much, it's not so important where we are in one sense as which direction we're going in, because somebody could be more elevated than you, and he's saying Krishna's that way, and he's going away from Krishna. He was going close to Krishna, and now he's 10 and he's going. So what's important is which direction are you going in, and how quickly are you going in that direction. If Krishna's 1,000 miles in front, and you're going 1 mile, takes you an hour to do a mile, then you're in with a good chance, actually. But if you're not going very fast, then you may have to think, okay, I need to intensify my level of devotional service, become more eager, more enthusiastic, to speed up the process so I can get there. And we don't want to wait until we get there at the end of our life. We'd like to get there a bit sooner. It would be nice to be Krishna conscious before that. So I just listened to an interesting lecture by Mahatma Prabhu. He was saying, when you're reading, how you read and what your agenda is determines what you read. And he said, some devotees have studied Srila Prabhupada's books to find reasons why they should leave ISKCON. You know, well, it says this here, and this is not what's happening. It says, so that's really out of context with what Srila Prabhupada's books were there to help nourish and increase people's commitment to being in ISKCON. So we have to watch out for that as well. That we may be reading, but we may be hearing, but we may have a filter, and the filter is only allowing things in that we want to hear that will substantiate what our agenda is. So that's interesting, because we're making progress on the path. We're taking a step forward every day just by going through the routine activities in devotional service. The Nectar of Devotion explains, circumambulating Tulsi Devi, attending Mangalarti, taking Charanamrita, applying tilak to the body, chanting Hare Krishna on Tulsi beads, accepting initiation, performing devotional service. There's so many acts that we perform every day which completely give us a fresh start forward in our devotional life. And even somebody that comes in, immediately on his first day, he experiences how blissful Krishna consciousness is. And then the challenge is in the intermediate stage, before we get to the point of being Nishta, can we maintain our enthusiasm by being patient and confident? And this is maybe going to take a little bit longer. There was one time Srila Prabhupada was chanting really, really powerfully, and Narayan Prabhu was there. And Prabhupada was going, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Hare. He was striding up and down. He was really powerful, like a lion. And Narayan said, Srila Prabhupada, do you think I can become a pure devotee? And Srila Prabhupada said, yes. And then he turned and he walked, Hare Krishna, Krishna. And he turned back around and then he said, but it may take some time. So it's a question of how long it's going to take. And so it's encouraging that there are stages, because then we can chart our progress. Okay, so I'm at the stage of approaching the Goswamis and understanding them through Narottam Das Thakur. We can reflect on his bhajans today and how he's guiding us to the lotus feet of Rupa Goswami. We are Rupa Nugas, Shri Chaitanya Manobhastam Stapitam Yena Bhutale. So everything's hinged on our relationship with Rupa Goswami. So are we aware of that? Are we going in that direction? And what stage are we at now? How much progress have we made since the same time last year, 10 years ago? Where do we want to be in the future? What is our goal? What do we hope to, in 10 years from now, in what ways would we hope to have improved? Any questions or comments? I'll run through the translation. So basically, it's nice here. It's referring to our supreme benediction, supreme experience, which is interesting, isn't it? It's interesting. If you wanted to glorify, you said to the Prime Minister, Kripa Moyes just sent me an email, and he said he was with the head of the Labour Party. He's vegetarian, and his whole family's vegetarian. Kripa Moyes was saying, maybe this will be our first vegetarian Prime Minister. I was saying back to him, well, I hope this one's not got a cabbage for a brain. But imagine if you said to Kia Stama, "Oh, supreme experience." It's quite a glorification, isn't it? Supreme experience. That's and it also refers to the form of Krishna. as being the blissful. The transcendental bliss they enjoy is the transcendental form, because Krishna is non-different. So whether you're tasting Krishna in prasadam, or you're experiencing the bliss of Krishna consciousness, or you're hearing the holy name very attentively, that's the form. That's how Krishna is showing his form. Transcendental bliss is his form, which is interesting because generally you would think, I will perceive form through my eyes and it will have certain dimensions. But it's interesting to contemplate, at least, that we can experience Krishna's form by how blissful we're feeling. And that kind of ties in with supreme experience also. And the darkness in our hearts is eradicated when you are revealed. So Krishna explains in the Gita, 13th chapter, text 8 to 12. He explains all the symptoms of knowledge, and he says, besides these, whatever there may be, is ignorance. So ignorance implies we're ignoring something. If you're an ignorant person, it means you're ignoring things. He's very ignorant. I just told him, and he totally ignored me. So that's a symptom of someone in ignorance. They're very good at ignoring. And the supreme person we're ignoring is Krishna. So whatever there may be, if it's not if it doesn't involve us becoming aware of Krishna, then it's ignorance. It's us turning our back on Krishna in one way or another. Which is interesting. If we do one of the Hare Krishnas becomes the Prime Minister and he decides to revamp the educational system in the UK and decide anything in the curriculum which involves forgetfulness of Krishna is being kicked out, and we just want to involve things which are going to remind us of Krishna. Of course, it doesn't mean that we don't have, we have the ABC 1, 2, 3, and we have knowledge, so many different forms of knowledge, but the knowledge is helping us to become more aware of the supreme reality, Krishna, not less aware, not pushing God out the picture. As one scientist was saying, I've researched all my life, and all I've ended up with is particles, and somewhere along the way, the meaning of life has escaped me. So he's been dissecting and pulling things apart, but when he actually gets to the conclusion is that there's no meaning, everything is meaningless, which is kind of counterproductive, isn't it? Knowledge is meant to be the pursuit of meaning, and then the end goal of the pursuit of meaning is that there isn't any. So then everything you've done is invalidated. There's no meaning. We've come from nothing. We go back to nothing. Then whatever we do is of no real benefit or progress. And Srila Prabhupada said that. He said, either God, everything has been created by God, all other arguments are meaningless. So as soon as you take Krishna out of the picture, then whatever you have has no meaning. There's no meaning to anything. There's no meaning to a bang. A bang going off, isn't there? And all the particles exploding out from the bang. There's no meaning to that. It's just happened by random. It's a random explosion, and everything that's going on is just random. So then that will cause mental health problems if you try to live a life which is based on absurdity, with no meaning. Any comments or questions? Yes, Regular Bhatta.
Hare Krishna. It's this interesting thing about when darkness in the heart is completely eradicated, and then the Lord is revealed. And this time of the year can be a little bit gloomy. So, and there is this principle wherever is Krishna. What is that verse? Krishna Surya Sama Maya Hoyandakara Yahan Krishna Tahanagi Maya Radhikara. That Krishna is like sunshine and Maya is completely compared to darkness. But wherever there is sunshine, there is no darkness. So you actually, for next few months, it's personal experience. You have to take it literally, actually, because I mean the sky is cloudy, but above the sky, above the clouds, is the sun of Krishna. So I find that you have to increase your sadhana to raise above this kind of certain atmosphere comes with the darker part of the year. So you increase sadhana, hearing and chanting, and also kind of try to deepen relationships as well, trying to be more kind and warm to each other, and it helps you to get through the winter. Obviously, it's not the reason to, ultimate reason to do this. You want to increase Krishna consciousness, but ultimately we should be taking shelter of Krishna no matter what is causing it. So this is a good opportunity to bring some more son of Krishna in life.
Yeah, I was going to share you. I think I read this out the other day, but this is from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, which is interesting. He says, when faults in others misguide and delude you. So, yeah, when it becomes very dark and Krishna's not in the picture anymore, then we become misguided and deluded by finding faults in others. He says, have patience and introspect, find faults in yourself, know that others cannot harm you unless you harm yourself. So, so I thought that was interesting that it's a proactive choice that you make, although you may not realize it, that you choose to find faults in others rather than find faults in yourself. And because you would think, if I'm going to find faults in myself, that's going to put me in a vulnerable condition. But if I find faults in others, then that's going to protect me. But actually, it's completely the reverse of what happens. So the nature of being in ignorance and not being Krishna conscious is that we become preoccupied then with the externals that are going on around us, which in community life is seeing the shortcomings and the failings of other devotees. And by being preoccupied with that, we become misguided and we become deluded. So it all seems very straightforward at first. When you take up Krishna consciousness, I just have to be enthusiastic, dancing kirtan, take plenty of halava at the Sunday feast. What's the problem? Haribol, It seems really, very straightforward. But then as you go on, some days you don't feel so blissful, and you don't feel so appreciative, and the faults of others becomes very, very prominent, and it distracts us then from being conscious of Krishna. So there's Krishna, and then there's Maya. So Maya doesn't just come in the form of a pretty girl. She comes in many different forms. And that ignorance, besides this, Krishna is saying wherever there is ignorance. And it's interesting, the first two symptoms of knowledge are humility and pridelessness. So they say pride comes before a fall. So this tendency to find fault. In fact, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was saying, I think some disciples were arguing, and he was saying, he said, can you find anything good? Can you find anything to glorify in this devotee? And he was really, really. Then after some time, he found something to glorify in the devotee. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was saying that if we find fault and we criticize others, it means there's not a shred of humility in us, which is interesting. So we want to be humble, and we want to be prideless, and we want to be rightly situated so that we can become illuminated by awareness of Krishna's presence, his form, experience that transcendental bliss. And then we are deluded and we're misguided by becoming preoccupied with things which are making us ignore our relationship with Krishna, putting us into ignorance, darkness of ignorance. So then you start realizing, okay, this is actually a little bit tricky, this Krishna consciousness, because if we were just practicing it on our own in a cave, we may think that's going to be easier, because then we don't have to interact with anybody, and we don't have to worry about finding faults with anybody or being offensive, because you're only in the cave, and there's no one really there to have a problem with. But then, because you're in the cave, you don't get the benefit of the inspiration and the example of being with the devotees, and you don't get to check out whether you have got the qualities or not, because you won't really know, will you? It's only when you step out the cave and you start walking down the road and then you bump into somebody, and then you'll find out whether you've got the 26 qualities of a devotee or you haven't. Otherwise you could be thinking, I'm doing really well here, I must be a pure devotee. And then you walk down the road and someone splashes in the puddle. Hey, what do you think you're doing? And you're like, oops. Okay, I need to work on myself a bit more, you know. And it's interesting also that we harm ourselves because when we aren't focusing on our own faults, that's like a person who has a boat and he has to cross the ocean. And crossing the ocean is going to happen at the time of death. So he's got his whole life to make sure that that boat is seaworthy. And if he never puts water inside the boat, then he'll never know where the holes are. And he won't be able to work on them. So when you see some hole in yourself, some shortcoming, some gap in your Krishna consciousness, then that's great. Okay, so I know what it is now. I can deal with it now because I'm not going to be able to deal with it at the time of death. At the time of death, I'm going to be in the boat, and it's either going to be sinking or it's going to be floating across. So better to find out now that I've got a stinker, and deal with it, so that when the time comes, I can get in and I can be confident that I'll get across. Any questions or comments about that? I'll wait till the curtain's open. My wife told me off for saying this. Shishikone Taimai Pachashi Ke Jai, Shitosinath Maharaj Ki Jai, Shinkarit Harilal Ki Jai, Shin Single Bhagavan Ki Jai, Shishiral Damadara Ki Jai, Shilanatham Dastakar Ki Jai. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that at the very beginning, Prabhupada is saying in the purport that there are different grades of revelation to various grades of devotees and transcendentalists. So there's different kind of levels of becoming aware of who Krishna is, and they're all Krishna to one degree or another, but some of them are more distant, and some of them are more intimate. And then the most intimate is something which we access by the mercy of the 6 Goswamis. So different grades of revelation. So it's interesting also that it's grades of revelation, because generally when you're doing education, it's not by revelation that you become accomplished, but it's by memorization. And to some degree, you have some kind of collective awareness of what it is you're studying, and then you can apply that in different circumstances. So then they say, oh, this person has understood very well the subject matter, but it's not been revealed to him. If he's studying, the best chemicals to mix together to make a big explosion, over a period of trial and error, then he finds when you put these together, it makes a real big bang, and so then his study is considered successful. But that's not a revelation. That's kind of just stumbling across things and patiently doing the same thing over and over again till you come to some conclusion about something. But that can't be considered real knowledge, and it can't be considered revelation. Like when Archimedes was having a bath, right? He suddenly shouted out, "Eureka!" And he got some awareness about how the displacement of water works, and then he was able to put forward a theory. But it wasn't really eureka in the full sense, because eureka in the full sense would have been that he realized that the knowledge had been given to him. He hadn't understood it. It wasn't like a logical progression of information that brought him to this conclusion. It was something that just came out from nowhere, and then he took the credit for it. It became Archimedes' principle, whereas it should have really been Krishna's principle. It should have been called Krishna's principle, and the eureka should have been Haribol, because he realizes that Krishna's just stepped in and helped him to solve the problem, But he wasn't able to appreciate that because of the false ego. And so through purification and sattva gun, we can see things more clearly when we become free from the influence of the modes of tamas and the modes of rajas. When we're in the mode of goodness, sattva gun, then we can see things clearly. But getting out of the modes is lifestyle. So when we're embarking on acquiring knowledge, We have to look at the lifestyle. With the Ayurvedic, if you go down to the doctors, he opens his cabinet and he's got antidepressant or antibiotic. And then he's like, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Okay, take the antidepressant. There's basically just got a few medicines and everybody gets... With Ayurveda, the doctor asks you, first of all, what are you eating? What type of exercise are you doing? How are you sleeping? And then he works out your constitution, what type of body you've got. He says, well, you shouldn't be eating this. And you shouldn't be going around outside at this time of year. You should stay wrapped up and keep indoors. He'll tell you all these things. And they say, you should be sleeping like this. You should be sleeping at least this many hours. You should face east. You should do this, that. You should be taking rest by 9, 10 o'clock. You should be rising early. All these, the doctor never asks, does it? Doctor doesn't even ask these things. So they say that faith in the diagnosis determines whether or not you'll apply the remedy. So if you don't have much faith in the doctor and his diagnosis, then you won't be very enthusiastic to follow what he's prescribing you, So so it's by various grades of revelation that we become aware, and so we're also able to diagnose ourselves and understand ourselves more clearly. Why am I behaving this way? That means I'm being influenced by the mode of passion, or I'm being influenced by the mode of ignorance. If I behave more like this would be more in the mode of goodness. So we can diagnose ourselves and we can say, oh, well, therefore, I must be at this particular level right now in my Krishna consciousness, and therefore I need to take this step. There's a book by Shiva Ramaj, Sankalpa something, and it Kaumudi, Sankalpa Kaumudi, yeah. And Sankalpa Kaumudi, Sankalpa is all about taking the next step, committing, and then taking the next step. And you can only take the next step. It's like if you're on the stairs and you decide you want to put your foot on a step that's 15 steps higher, you're not going to be able to do that unless you know which step you're on. And then you can think, okay, so I'm here, so I can take this. This is the next step. And then you can go up, and that's how you can. Otherwise, if you try to take too big a step, then you'll become overwhelmed, and then you'll fall down the stairs, and then you'll have to start all over again. Sankalpa Kaumudi is all about finding out where you're at and finding out what the next step is that you need to take. So it's quite scientific, really. The science of consciousness, there's very little about it, isn't it? In the educational system, they don't even know that they've got consciousness. In Chinese, there's not a word for consciousness. So they have a job trying to translate the books because there's no Chinese word for consciousness. So it's going to be hard to understand it if you don't even know you've got it. Interesting, yeah? So we are aware that we have consciousness, and we're aware to some degree or another that this body isn't really us. And that's quite a scary thought, actually, if you want to get scared, if you want to buy something. Because we understand that in Krishna consciousness, there's never a time when we don't exist, that we're eternal. So you think, oh, well, that's great, I never die. That's a big relief. But the interesting thing is, when the soul finally goes back to Godhead, everything that you know of as yourself will be annihilated, will be finished. And in terms of who you are right now, it's as good as dying, it's as good as being dead. Like if you're in the spiritual world and you've been in the spiritual world for a few million years and you've gone back to Godhead, and somebody comes up and says, do you remember when you used to be back to Bob? And 2022, you spelt the doll all over back to Fred. You'd be like, it's just so far removed from who you are. So it'll be the same as in one sense, is not existing. Everything that you know yourself as through the false ego will not exist any longer. So when people say they're afraid of dying, they're afraid of having to give up their existence, what they know themselves as. Of course, they don't have an alternative, so they're very afraid. But still, there's a fear there, because everything has been taken away from us. I mean, right now, Krishna's taking it away just a little bit, just a particle at a time, kind of. So we gently become more and more aware that we're not who we think we are. Where at the time of death, it's very sudden. Everything just gets taken away, wrenched away, and the consciousness is dislocated from the body. So that could be quite overwhelming. So, any last questions or comments? Jai. Okay, I'll leave it there then. ISKCON Gurvinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Nitai Gaura Premanandi.
Okay. Jai.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.